Hare Krishna. Anybody remembers? Chapter 2, how many slokas? Hare Krishna. Okay. Karma Yoga. So in chapter 2, how many slokas we had? Hare Krishna. Anybody remembers? It was a long chapter.
72, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
72. It was a long chapter. So there were a lot of concepts which Krishna was putting out to counteract the arguments given by Arjuna for not fighting. So it was a very long chapter, and so naturally it will be confusing to Arjuna, right? So before we enter into this Karma Yoga, let us pay obeisance to Radharani. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Dhananjana Shalakaya Chakshumritam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manabhishtam Sthapitam Mena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadam Mahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapada Kamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavscha Shri Rupam Sagarajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vittam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakana Vittamshta He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dino Bandho Jagat Pate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishavanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hare Priye Vancha Kalpatra Abhyascha Kripa Sindhu Abhevacha Patitam Nam Pavnebhyo Vaishnavyo Namo Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namane Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravane Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pascha Deshatarine Jayo Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So this is what we saw in the last chapter. That is in chapter 1, observing the armies. We saw how Arjuna put forth reasons for not wishing to fight, and they were compassion for his kinsmen, and he said there won't be enjoyment when there are no people around to enjoy with. And then he was fear of sinful reactions, and he thought there will be a destruction of family tradition. So then in chapter 2 we saw in the beginning how he put forth his indecision, how now he was confused, and he asked Krishna, I'm your disciple now, you please tell me what I am to do, what is good for me, what is beneficial. I am your Shishya. So then, this Krishna started off with telling you talk like a Pandita, but you are misguided. So he gave him the Jnana. He said, there is no death for the soul, so fight. You are not killing anybody. They are only changing their clothes from one body to another. And he talked about the transmigration. And he said, so there you only have to fight, and there's no death for the soul. They're not killing the body, the soul. Then he talked about karma kada and said that because you're a Kshatriya and it is your duty to fight for the religion, for the religious cause. So there will be no loss in it, because if you die because you're fighting for religious cause, the Kshatriya will go to the heavenly planets, or if you gain or if you win, you will get the kingdom. So it's a win-win situation. And then he talked about, and he said it was sinful reaction. He said, oh, go beyond that, because he gave him the knowledge that there's no soul, you're the soul, and you have to fight as per your prescribed duties. So he says, you fight for the Lord. That means don't bother about the fruits of your thing. You Nishkama Karma Yoga. You give up the fruits for the Lord and you fight. Just fight without any desire for winning or losing. Just be fight. So then Nishkama Karma Yoga. Then you won't have any reactions. So when Arjuna asked him how such a person could be, with great determination you do it. So Sthita Prajna, we saw the characteristics. So it was a long chapter, 72 verses. And it's like, it covered all the aspects. But now it puts anyone into confusion. So this chapter is only 43 verses. So it starts off with, see, every time it will start with either query by Arjuna or it will be a continuation from the last discussion. So here it starts off with the confusion by Arjuna. Because he heard so much and there were so many times Krishna was talking about Buddhi Yoga and Buddhi, he was using that word intelligence. So he thought he was a very intelligent person and he thought Krishna was talking in contradictory. So he asked him, I'd rather, instead of working for Nishkama Karma, I'd rather renounce and take up sannyas. And then later, how Arjuna Krishna goes from Karma Kanda to Karma Yoga, then how to act dutifully with detachment to set the correct example. Then he finally elaborated on the lust and anger, which is the one which is because we can't control our mind and our thing, how we fall down. So this is how it has been organized. So we start with the dealing with the confusion. So renunciation. So Jnana Yoga is difficult. It's better for Arjuna, one should go from Karma Kanda to Karma. And even if you are qualified for renunciation, you still do Nishkama Karma to set an exam. So, and we talk about the last. Okay, what was the confusion? Dealing with the confusion, renunciation or working in Nishkama Karma Yoga. Arjuna was Jayasi chat karmanaste mata buddhir janatana tat kim karmani ghore mam niyajasi kesha. Why should I engage in this costly warfare? Because he says it's too costly and there will not many people will. And why should I think? I would rather avoid it and take up sannyas. So this is what he thinks. Because he's still not convinced that he has to fight. Okay. So he says, why should I engage myself in this ghastly warfare? Karmani gorema. Okay. And why this connection? If you look at that, in chapter, in verse 2.49, he says, Durane Havara. Krishna tells that keep all abominable activities far distant by Buddhi Yoga. So when he mentions abominable activities, he thinks warfare is also an abominable activity. So why should I do it? Why not I avoid doing that? And he says, use your buddhi means intelligence. By using his intelligence, you should avoid all abominable activities and thus he thinks not fight. And he's thinking, why is Krishna still urging him to fight? That is the confusion. So this contradictory instruction. Because it was clearly saying you have to be away from, and warfare is of course a costly warfare, right? So according to Arjuna, renunciation, jnana and work are incompatible. That means that knowledge and things are incompatible, right? This is what he was thinking. So Arjuna asks, Jyasi chet karmanaste mata buddhi janatana tat kim karmani gore mam niyojasi keshava. Why do you want to engage me in this costly warfare if you think that intelligence is better than fruitive work? So actually what happens is, many people when they think about spirituality, they only think of it is something to retire from the active life and practice penance and austerity in a secluded place. In fact, he is really wanting to he was trying to avoid fighting. That is very clear from this. Okay. So Arjuna was not really prepared to fight, isn't it? So here he's clearly saying that that Buddhi Yoga is something like retired life. So he wants to use Krishna consciousness as a means of escape. Go to a lonely place, do sadhana. So this is what many people, when they come, when they talk about spirituality, they think that they don't have to do any work. They have to only do meditation, do some sadhana, do some tapas, and that's what it's all about, and come away from the active life. But that is not what is Krishna is telling. Okay. One thing is, we find here throughout in Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna will never keep quiet. If there has any confusion or any doubts, he put forth. So it's like a student, he put forth his confusion. And Krishna will, the Lord does answer all his confusions. He really clarifies his doubts. Okay, that way he's a good student, and the Lord is also a good teacher, how he is very patient, and he patiently answers and gives him the answers and clarifies his doubts. Okay, so for us, any devotee, if he has a sadhaka's life and he wants to clarify, we never should do it by ourselves. We should always go to someone who can clarify our doubts in a devotee's life. So here, this is what it's all about. This is first thing which everybody will jump to, thinking that spiritual life means no active work. We have to do something, go for retirement. Okay. So next he continues to say, Vamshana Vakyena Buddhi Moha Shiva me Tad Ekam Vada Nishchaya Ena Shreyo Ham Apunya. So he's saying, my intelligence is bewildered by your equivocal instructions. Therefore, please tell me decisively which will be most beneficial. Shreya, which is, see, he doesn't say, it will be for each one, it is what is beneficial. So he's saying, what is most beneficial to me? You just please tell me. So actually, Krishna had no intention of confusing Arjuna by any jugglery of words. Only Arjuna could not follow the process of Krishna consciousness. He thinks Krishna consciousness to be inertia, or so whether to be inertia or active. In other words, by his questions, he's clearing the path of Krishna consciousness for all students who seriously want to understand the mystery of Bhagavad Gita. So this is very clear. In the purport, Prabhupada's writes, I've just taken it from the purport. Okay. So what was in 2.57? What did Krishna's Lord say? You have a right to perform a prescribed duty, but you are not entitled to the fruits of action. And never consider yourself the cause of the results of your activities. Okay? And never be attached to not doing your duty. So we have a right, that is, we have an adhikar to do prescribed duty, but we are not entitled to the fruits of actions. So, and why? Because we are not the only cause for the results of the activities. And then he says, not doing a duty also we should not touch. So we should do. So here clearly Krishna is telling, but why we are not attached to the fruits of the results of activities? Suppose if you take that you're sowing a seed and it grows up into a big tree and it gives a lot of fruits, then you can't say that you are the enjoyer of the fruits. Why? Because you only put it, the seed, and you watered it and took care of it and it grew. But we were not responsible for the seed, nor for the water, nor for the sun, or for the soil. All that was given by the Lord. And we had only done the endeavor. So Krishna is clear that we are not the cause of the results. There are so many factors. So we are not entitled. And now Arjuna's doubt is Ekam Vada. Tell me definitely what I should do. There he told that you are the soul, you are not killing the body. So he said, if I'm not killing the body, or if I'm thinking, why at all? I have to engage. And then he said this thing that, but you fight because you have to think. So here he clearly asks him, tell me exactly what I'm supposed to do. So Bhagavan Vacha. So what did the Lord say? The Lord said, O sinless Arjuna, I have already explained that two classes of men who realize the self. Some are inclined to understand him by empirical philosophical speculation. Others are inclined to know him by devotional work. So he talks about the two kinds of things. Jnanam yog sankhyanam, karma yogena yogena. Okay. So in the second chapter, the Lord explained two kinds of procedures, namely Sankhya Yoga, Karma Yoga, or Buddhi Yoga. In this verse, Lord explains the same more clearly. Sankhya Yoga, the analytical study of the nature of spirit and matter, is the subject matter for persons who are inclined to speculate, understand things by experimental knowledge and philosophy. Other class of men work in Krishna consciousness, as it explained in the 61st chapter, verse of the chapter. So that's why the Lord has explained also in the 39th verse that by working the principles of Buddhi Yoga, one can be relieved from the bonds of action. This is what we want, isn't it? We should be not be entitled by the reactions of the work. There is a no flaw in the process. The same principle was explained in the 61st verse, to depend entirely on the Supreme, and in this way all the senses can be brought under control very easily. So both the yogas are interdependent. As religion and philosophy, they are philosophy. Religion without philosophy is sentiment or sometimes fanaticism, while philosophy without religion is mental speculation. So like, that there are some people, they, in the name of religion, they're so fanatic that for them, they don't look into the philosophy. Whereas some people with the name, they only go by the philosophy without the religion. That is, they will only be mentally speculating. But ultimate goal is Krishna. So we have to, everybody is searching for the absolute truth. So the whole process is to understand the real position of the self in relation to the super self. Okay, this is what everybody is trying to understand. What are we and what are we in this relation to the absolute truth? Indirect process is philosophical speculation. Okay, so of these two, the path of Krishna consciousness is better because it does not depend on purifying the senses by philosophy. Itself is a thing. So this is what we need to understand very clearly. That chanting, Krishna consciousness itself, the purifying process means that when you do the chanting of Hare Krishna, it starts purifying you, purifying your all the anathas which you have inside us. So the process itself is purifying, and it's the direct method of devotional service. Is somebody. So this is what Krishna Prabhupada finds all the time in his purport is coming to this conclusion. Explains clearly the process of Krishna consciousness. Okay. So if you look at it, you will understand that Prabhupada doesn't starts off from the beginning itself to explain the process. So Krishna says, Na karmanam anarambhan naishya karma purushosnate nasha sanyasan eva siddhim samadhikachi. Not by merely abstaining from work can one achieve freedom from reaction. Just if you say that I won't do your prescribed duty, doesn't mean that you will be free from sinful reaction, because not doing duty is also wrong, isn't it? You have to do your duty. You have to work. So that way you are not escaping the reactions. You will have some sinful reactions. Not by renouncing. Renunciation alone one can attain perfection. So he says, if you renounce anything, do you think you'll get perfect? No, because you'll be too immature. Unless you should prepare yourself before you renounce your material activities, because you still have a lot of impurities in you which has to be purified. Without purification, without maturity, you can't renounce. So that way, the Krishna says, by renouncing alone, you cannot achieve perfection, because you're still not ready, you're still immature. And not working, you won't get freedom from reaction. So everyone is forced to act helplessly according to the qualities he has acquired from the modes of maturation. Therefore, no one can refrain from doing something, not even for a moment. And why does he say that? Why we can't escape work? Because we cannot keep. But our mind is all the time active. Soul is always active. It needs the mind needs some engagement. Otherwise, it's not possible. So that's why we are forced to act according to the qualities we have. That what do you mean by that? Acquired from the modes of material nature. You can see in any family when you have 4 or 5 children, not all of them will react in the same way, isn't it? Each one has got their own nature. They have got the acquired from their previous birth, isn't it? Though they are in the same family, got up in the same atmosphere, but still there are certain qualities they have. Each one will have their own qualities. That's what here Krishna says. Each one, they have their own qualities acquired from the modes of material nature. And they cannot refrain from doing something, not even for a moment, because we need an engagement. Let us see. Anybody want Hare Krishna? Any volunteers? It's not a question of embodied life. Hare Krishna. Radhika Mataji. Anybody else?
Yes, Mataji, I can do.
Yes, Prabhuji.
It is not a question of embodied life, but it is a nature of the soul to be always active. Without the presence of the spirit soul, the material body cannot move. The body is only a dead vehicle to be worked by the spirit soul, which is always active and cannot stop even for a moment. As such, the spirit soul has to be engaged in the good work of Krishna consciousness, otherwise it will be engaged in occupations dictated by the illusory energy. In contact with material energy, the spirit soul acquires material modes, and to purify the soul from such affinities, it is necessary to engage in the prescribed duties enjoined in the Shastras. But if the soul is engaged in his natural function of Krishna consciousness, whatever he is able to do is good for him. This is according the Shrimad Bhagavatam 1.5.17 affirms this. If someone takes to Krishna consciousness, even though he may not follow the prescribed duties in the Shastras or execute the devotional service properly, and even though he may fall down from the standard, there is no loss or evil for him. But if he carries out all the injunctions for purification in the Shastras, what does it avail him if he is not Krishna conscious? So the purification process is necessary for reaching this point of Krishna consciousness. Therefore, sannyas or any purification process is to help reach the ultimate goal of becoming Krishna conscious, without which everything is considered a failure.
Hare Krishna. So what does it mean? That the soul is always active, it needs some engagement. So either we have to engage in the good work for Krishna consciousness, that is do devotional service, otherwise we'll be engaged by occupations dictated by the Maya. So either you'll be working for Krishna or you'll be working for Maya, for your own self-gratification. So, and the spirit soul acquires materials. To purify the soul from such affinities, it's necessary to engage in prescribed duties enjoined in the Shastras. But if you engage in the natural function, because we are Sachidananda, we are actually in its soul is eternal and it is got its own thing. But because it is got conditioned by the material world, by coming into this material world, it gets conditioned. So it has forgotten its relationship with the Lord and it is under the illusory energy. Okay. So because of that, if you engage in the Krishna consciousness work, what happens? That is its natural work. So it gets the purification. But if you go by the Shastras, but you have to do with devotion to the Lord. Otherwise, it's just here. So here Krishna says, and the Prabhupada writes, but if he carry out all the injections for purification, what does it tell him if he's not? That means if he's not Krishna conscious, that means if he's not acknowledging, awareing that he is a part of the Lord, part and parcel of the Lord, and he simply carries out the injunctions as per the thing, this doesn't help him. Because only by ultimate goal is we have to become Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, it's considered a failure. So here Krishna says, Everyone is forced to act helplessly according to the qualities he has acquired from the modes of material nature. Therefore, no one can refrain from doing something, not even for a moment, because the soul is always active. So either you will be under the control of Maya, or you will be doing the work for Krishna. So this is so we need to engage in things. So Sankhya is impractical since and soul is active nature. So this is a dictation evolutionary. There's no loss. And here, when you are in this devotional work, there is no loss, even if there's a fall down, because Krishna says, no, everything is no diminution or thing when you are engaged in devotional work. So, and why we have this acquire the modes of nature? Because we are in the thing, and prescribed duties are recommended, and prescribed duties purifies the soul from affinities, and it leads to Krishna consciousness. So we need to do our prescribed duties because it is for our purification process, or for our purification. So the work is required for us, for our purification, not for anything else. Otherwise, we'll be doing it for them. So here, karmendriyani samyamya ye asti manasa smaran indriyartan vimudhatma mityachara sa nachati. But one who restrains a sense of action, but whose mind dwells on sense objects, certainly deludes himself and is called a pretender. So Krishna says, okay, you think that by taking up sannyas and you're restraining the senses of from the material world, but still your mind is on the sense objects. Still your mind is thinking like this sage you see in the picture. Though he has taken the garb of a sannyas, but still his mind is dwelling on the sense objects. He's smoking, he's on the mobile, and this thing is there. So it's such kind of answer to this, Krishna is not accepting. He says he's such a pretender. So for our purification process only we need work. Work is required for us. Okay. So, but on the other hand, if a sincere person tries to control the active senses by the mind and begins karma yoga without attachment, is by far superior. Why? What he is doing? He is engaging his senses in the work for the Lord. So that way he is by far superior than a person who tries to control the senses, but his mind is still pondering over the sense objects. So is a cheta, shows to be in the, though he thinks that is a deep meditation, but mind is dwelling on things. So his philosophy, he might talk very well, he'll talk all big lectures on the philosophy and all that, but it has no value because his mind is still on the sense objects. It is stolen by the illusionary. For sense object, no, there are restricted, regulated way. So you, I mean, it doesn't mean that you should not enjoy your thing, but you should do it in a regulated manner. Like brahmacharya, there are, depending on the which order of which ashrama you are in. If it's a brahmachari or a grahastha or a vanaprastha or sannyasa, depending on that, you have certain rules and regulations of orders which you follow, and then slowly you get purified. That's how it is being explained in the Vedas. Okay, in the Vedic times, this is how it has been done. And so, sincere person controls his senses, engages in karma yoga without attachment. This is far superior. Okay. Right. Yeah. Niyatam kuru karmatvam karma javo karmana sarira etrapicha na prasida. So perform a prescribed duty. For doing so is better than not working. One cannot even maintain one's physical body without work. So why is work is required? Not only for our purification, work is required even to maintain our physical body. Otherwise, what happens? We become a burden to the society. So he says, perform your prescribed duty. For doing so is better than not working. One cannot even maintain one's physical body without work. So prescribed duties you perform, it starts gradually, purifies your heart. And if you renounce that and don't think, you fall down since activity is given up before purifying your heart. So Arjuna is a Kshatriya and he's also a Grahastha. So he's asked him to engage himself in war, not renouncing and going to forest. So work should not be given up capriciously without purification of materialistic propensities. That means you still have certain desires for the materialistic thing. So you should slowly give it up, purify yourself of that, and then only you can take up renunciation, not before that. So prescribed duties, why we need to do. So here karma, why we should do karma is being explained here very clearly, isn't it? So the emphasis here is the soul is active, it requires engagement and wise wisdom and also how you to control your senses. Edatat karma no entra, lokoyam karma bandhana, tad hartam karma kauntaya mukta sangha samaja. So work done as a sacrifice for Vishnu has to be performed. Otherwise, work causes bondage in this material world. Therefore, a son of Kunti, perform your described duties for his satisfaction. And that way he will always remain free from bondage. Okay. So Nishkama Karma Yoga allows the soul to be active, but in a detached way, so as to protect him from bondage. So this is what we learn by Nishkama. Why we have to do Nishkama Karma Yoga? Perform work as a sacrifice to Vishnu, or else work causes bondage. But if you work for the Lord, it's not binding, but liberating. But for that, you work under the guidance of a spiritual master. Slowly, you will get gradually elate and develop transcendental loving service to Lord. So back to Godhead. Otherwise, what happens? The action, you'll be caught in the action conscious bondage, and you'll be caught in the cycle of birth and death. If you do it only for yourself, action working, sense gratification. If it is good action or bad action, you will have both on your account and you will be in the cycle of birth and death. Okay. So let us. So here Krishna says in this verse, if a sincere person tries to control back mind and begin karma yoga, instead of becoming a pseudo transcendentalist for the sake of wanton living and sense judgment, it's far better to remain in one's own business and execute the purpose of life, which is to get free from the material bondage and enter the thing. So the prime Swatagati, goal of self-interest, is to reach Vishnu. The whole institution of Varna Ashrama is designed to help us reach this goal of life. A householder can also reach this destination by regulated service in Krishna consciousness. So this is what here Prabhupada explains. For self-realization, one can live in a controlled life as prescribed in the Shastras and continue carrying out his business without attachment. So here it is very clearly explained that we no need to give up the work which we have, whatever the role we have, that is the responsibility we have, isn't it? As a family man or as a, in each place we have a certain role we play as a family member, as a student, or in our office, or whatever the role. So Krishna doesn't tell you to leave everything and take up sannyas. He says, whichever position you are, you do that service in Krishna consciousness. So that way you just think that whatever work you're doing, it is for your own good, for your own purification. You need that. And slowly you purify yourself with all the anathas, and slowly you start, the self-awareness starts increasing about your true identity. Till you get to that realization, you need to live a controlled life as prescribed in the Shastras and carry out this business without attachment. In that way, we can make progress in spiritual life. A sincere person who follows this method is far better, is situated than the false pretender who adopts show bottle spiritualism. Show bottle spiritualism is only for show to the others, but inside he is not yet purified. He is still anchoring for sense gratification. He is only cheating the public. So a sincere sweeper in the street is far better than the charlatan meditator. You meditate only for sake of making a living. So here very clearly we require that. And also, Krishna is in this verse, there are many pseudo meditators who represent themselves as belonging to high parentage, and great professional men who falsely pose that they have sacrificed everything for sake of advancement in spiritual life. So Krishna didn't want Arjuna to become a pretender. He desired that Arjuna performed his duties as set forth for Kshatriya. So if we are whichever we are, as a householder or a thing, we need to follow that duty. Arjuna was a householder, a military general, therefore it is better for him to remain as such and perform his religious duties as prescribed by for the householder Kshatriya. So such activities gradually cleanse the heart of a mundane man and free from material contamination. So if you renounce for the purpose, so called renunciation for the purpose of maintenance is never approved by the Lord, nor by any religious scripture. So we have to maintain body and soul together by some work. Work should not be given up capriciously without purification. Okay. So such impure propensities. So we will be living in the cost of others. So here, if you work for the Lord, what happens? You will be working for the Lord, the satisfaction of Vishnu. So since one has to work even for simple maintenance of the body, the prescribed duties for a particular social position are made so that the purpose can be fit. Yajna means Lord Vishnu, or sacrificial performance. All sacrificial performance are meant for the satisfaction of Lord Vishnu. So Yajna is Vishnu. The same purpose is served when one performs prescribed yajnas or directly serves Lord Vishnu. So Krishna consciousness is therefore performance of yajna as is prescribed in this verse. So Varnasham. So therefore one has to work. So I mean, I'm repeating the same thing. This only thing is not this only thing we need to understand what is the process of Krishna consciousness. Why we have to do that? Because otherwise what happens, we will be caught in the cycle of birth and death. Okay. In the beginning, so this starts with the chapter 10. We'll talk about that. So I think Saha Yajna Prajas Rastva Purova Prajapit Anena Prashati Hesa. The beginning of creation, the Lord of all creatures sent forth generations of men and demigods along with sacrifices for Vishnu, and blessed them by saying, "Be thou happy with this yajna, because his performance will bestow upon you everything desirable for living happily and achieving Vishnu." So anyone can read this. So what is clearly said here is the material creation by the Lord is a chance offered to conditional souls to come back home, back to God. And we wanted to enjoy ourselves, we desired it. So the Lord said, okay, if you want to desire, if you want to enjoy, the material creation is made there, material world is there, go there and enjoy. But not only he created the material world, he also gave Vedas, and he also told us how to live in this world as per the Vedic instructions. And then after desiring and after living, you should come back to him. That is our goal. All living entities within this material creation are conditioned by material nature because of their forgetfulness of relation to Krishna. So the Vedic principles are to help us understand this relationship. As it's stated in Bhagavad Gita, Vedaishchai Sarva Ham Veda. The Lord said the purpose of Vedas is to understand him. Okay? We have forgotten him, so he has given us the Vedas to understand him. In the Vedic hymns, it is said, Patim Vishwasyamevra. Therefore, the Lord of the living entities is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, And here, what is the yajna for the Kali Yuga? It is in the age of Kali, the Sankirta yajna, chanting is the recommended by the Vedic scriptures. And this transcendental system was introduced by Lord Chaitanya for the deliverance of all men in this age. So Sankirta yajna and Krishna consciousness go well together. Lord Krishna in his devotional form is mentioned in the Sri Bhagavad as follows with special reference to the Sankirta yajna. Okay, so this is what we need to do for Krishna consciousness. The chanting of is recommended for the age of spirit. Okay. People who are endowed with sufficient intelligence will worship the Lord, who is accompanied by his association by performance of Sankirtan. Other yajnas prescribed in Vedic are not easy to perform in this age of Kali. Okay. So we'll just so what did we learn here? Yeah. So this is the progressive yoga ladder. I'm not putting. See, in the beginning, when we don't understand anything, we don't take the spiritual life. We are in the as like an animal life. We just live for eating, mating, and our own sense gratification. And slowly, when we come out of that and start looking at the Vedic injunctions, that means we start looking at the regulative principles and take to this, then we are entering. You regulate your sense gratification as per the Vedic injunctions. They live a disciplined life, okay, and as per the religious life. That means you are in the karma kanda stage, right? But when you start going towards thing and you want to do nishkama karma and you start offering the results of your activities to the Lord, then slowly your selfish desires come down. Okay, that is a sakama karma yoga. When you start offering the results partly at least to the Lord, then you're in that yoga ladder. And then when you reach the perfection stage is when you have no desire for personal interest, but you still do your work as well. Then you can grow up progressively towards the bhava stage. So this is how we progress in our spiritual life. That's different stages from karma kanda, sakama, and more we are going to see in the coming verses. Okay, I stop with this because it is more on sacrifices and all we talk about in the next verses, but let us take it slowly. Okay, till this I just stop. If there's any confusion till now, karma yoga, karma, nishkama karma, sakama, we can, how we progress in this, Krishna is talking about. Any doubts in this verses?